as always, NFL Fridays on the show. Although I will say, Father Akshay, is currently 11 under right now. Solo lead at the Valero. I'm not going to say I told you so, but I kind of told you so. Knock on wood there. Very excited to see that. Hope he gets into the Masters.
He was due.
What?
He was due.
He was so due.
Yeah.
He was in the best form. He was probably one of the most tipped golfers this week, but it makes sense. If you did any form of analysis, he should have been.
Yeah, he was popping up.
Yeah, he was right there. Even giving him out top 40, top 20, whatever it was. But Masters are next week, not this week. If you're not in the Masters pool, we'll put that into the description. That'll be on Splash Sports.
I'm getting in that. I've already started a little bit of my Masters research.
Honestly, it's going to be a good Masters. It's a very hyped up Masters right now.
I mean, we have Liv. I think Scotty Scheffler coming along is huge. Obviously, the Masters, it kind of comes down to course history, which is always the big thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Liv stuff I think is going to be the storyline.
Yeah, it was last year. I went last year, which was actually a really good time. It's a little weird though, because when you go, obviously you can't bring your phone in, which not that you want your phone there because it gives something to the whole tournament. I hate when I go to golf tournaments and everyone just has their phone out and they're recording.
Or the ball lands next to them and then they immediately are just oh.
Right. So there's something to it, but at the same time, you get to a certain point where fuck, I kind of wish I had my phone because I want to know where this golfer is, where that it's hard to figure out while you're there. So I wish there was a way that they could kind of get rid of social media while you're there. But we'll talk NFL. For those of you that don't know Ben, he's been on the show before, reoccurring guest, founder of Capwise, at Ben_Cary_ on Twitter. Ben, how's it going?
It's going good. The draft is always fun to talk about. I know 2 years ago, you came on my stream and we had really good success. We crushed it. Last year, I think I broke even. Last year was kind of weird. It almost felt like there weren't as many opportunities to really find, I guess, some edges. But I think at least I have a few things I like, but we'll have to kind of talk through it and see what we can find.
Yeah, I think part of it too is that this is the first year in a couple years that, quarterback is obviously that's the big discussion. This is also a class where we haven't seen the wide receiver class maybe this deep since, JJ's class is pretty deep. People kind of
with Jerry Jeudy.
yeah. But, it was a deeper class, but again,
it was deep.
You look at classes like that, and it makes you a little bit nervous to bet on some of these guys because you have to be careful there with who.
And Brandon Ayuk too.
It was a deep class. Was Ruggs in that class?
Ruggs was, Ruggs, because Ruggs was drafted before Jefferson, but
that's right.
Looking back at it,
was the Rager year.
Yeah. Looking back at it, I think everyone had Ruggs going before. It's funny to look back and be oh, the Raiders could have drafted Justin Jefferson, but hindsight's 2020.
Right. I think betting on the Raiders to do anything correct in the draft is obviously not a strong bet, but I think this is the first class in a while where it's quarterback and wide receiver are very deep here. Edge, not so deep. Cornerback, not so deep. Offensive line, very deep. So it's a hard draft to cap, but I think you can find edges in those groupings that are not as deep. Your team and my team are two teams that are definitely can shake up the draft. So the Broncos and the Giants. I wanted to talk to you. I wanted you to come on because we have to talk about the Broncos a little bit.
So
talk to me about the Broncos.
Yeah. So the big thing here, with Denver, it's so funny because we're still 3 weeks away from the draft, and it almost feels like every week there's news that kind of comes in now that these quarterbacks are having conversations with the organization and with Sean Payton. It's funny to hear Bo Nix talk about when he met with Sean Payton, and then even Spencer Rattler. It's entertaining. It's insightful. I find it interesting, but I think the Broncos, the more I think about it, and as time gets closer to the draft and how information has been coming out, I do think they draft a quarterback. Now,
do you think that happens in the first round?
I do, but
Okay.
This is where it gets interesting because the Cardinals are sitting at 4, and they're the team I think looks to trade that pick.
Okay.
If Denver gets aggressive and tries to get that pick and trades up for it, they're 100% drafting a quarterback. But what is the likelihood of the Broncos getting that 4th pick? Is there another team that actually wants to trade up to get their guy? Like, I don't know. The Giants could, because maybe they're almost playing defense a little bit because they know that the Broncos could be trading up. We can talk more about that, but that's going to be like the huge ripple effect in this draft, because if the Broncos get aggressive, there's going to be probably 4 or 5 guys or quarterbacks picked in the top 10, maybe. But if not, I don't know if the Broncos draft a quarterback at 12, because at that point, the only guy left would be like Bo Nix or Pennick.
Yeah.
They're not going 12th. So the more I think about it, I do believe the Broncos will trade up. So some information that I got
Okay.
for the show. It is off record, so I can't name the person's name, but he did play with the Broncos in Super Bowl 50.
Okay.
He's knowledgeable. He has connections in the space. And again, it's speculation. Like, we're still 3 weeks away. Things can change. But I asked him, what will the Broncos do? Do we draft a quarterback? And he said Mayor McCarthy probably trading with Arizona. That's what he told me. So
Okay.
I trust him. And again, things can change. I don't know exactly what he's getting that from, but I do trust the info. Like, he's not blowing smoke up my ass. And I
Right.
like both those guys. They check the boxes. So what are your thoughts hearing that?
So do you guys have a first round pick next year? No, right?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I want to say you don't for some reason. I don't know why.
I think you might be correct,
I
because
think I am.
with what is that from Russell?
I think so. I
Or
think
maybe
it is
it might
from
even be from Sean Payton, right? Because didn't we have to
maybe.
give up some picks for him, which
I'll have
is
to
so
look it up.
ironic.
Maybe producer Ryan can look it up for me because I
Ooh,
could be
I'm
wrong.
actually showing 8. There, but that's like, obviously that's a mock depending on how the teams
Yeah.
end up. But yeah, maybe producer Ryan can
It
double check
feels
on that.
like so the Broncos and the Raiders are two teams that I think are I mean, the Broncos maybe not so much anymore are starting like they're just getting overlooked a little bit to take a quarterback. I think the Broncos specifically, like you guys are in a really weird situation because you have all this money still tied up in a
Mm-hmm.
quarterback trade that did not work out. I as much as I think Sean Payton would be okay moving forward with Stidham, I just don't think he's that okay with it at the same time. Like,
I don't think he is, because if we think about Sean Payton, he is an offensive mind. He's aggressive in his play calling. I think he's aggressive as a head coach. Like, he stands on business. I mean,
yeah,
he basically said, "Hey, it's either me or Russ," right? And the ownership organization said, "Okay, we'll go with you." Like, he has more pull than George Payton does, or Patton, the GM. Like, it's kind of crazy. Most teams, it doesn't work that way on like the hierarchy. So I don't see him like not pursuing a quarterback and just staying with Stidham. And even
yeah,
if like we didn't draft a quarterback in the first round, like you mentioned earlier, we could still get Penix or potentially Rattler. And I think he would want to have one of those two start over Stidham. Nothing against Stidham, but Stidham is going to be
yeah,
he's just your average. We know what we're going to get out of him.
yeah, for sure. And right now too, and not really getting talked about. So Denver first drafted player to be a QB is minus 145.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
Bo
That's a,
Nix to be selected by Denver minus 175. Bo Nix has very big hands. Peyton loves his big hands. He's accurate, decent on the run,
wait,
and in the pocket. He's kind of a Sean Payton guy.
he is a Sean Payton guy. I mean, quick release,
Yeah.
quick game. Wait, you said he's 175 to go to the Broncos.
Where are we at? To be, let's see. So to first drafted player to be a QB by Denver, -145.
Okay.
Bo Nix to be selected by Denver, -175. You want to know the next shortest odds? They're not very short. Minnesota +400.
See, that doesn't make sense, because if you want to bet on either one of those two, you just bet with the Broncos to draft a QB. That makes more sense. So, and if you shop around, I think at FanDuel even had it at -125. So I like that quite a bit. I mean,
yeah,
I think that's good. Like, here's the thing, we could get off this show and there could be information that comes out and that moves to -500, or it Peyton could say, like, we're not trading. So that's the risk you take. But like, based on the info I got today, I feel good about -125 for the Broncos to draft a QB.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and I want to ask you about because I think draft betting, there's a piece of it where everyone needs to realize it's a little bit more public than like your average scenario. Like something could come out and then you see all of these like geeks on Twitter that see it and they go smash that. So it's not as sharp. Week of, we're talking a little bit different, but it's not as sharp as your standard betting, which is what makes NFL like draft betting so much fun. But right now, for the first round, Bo Nix to go in the first round is -200. Penix is +125.
Interesting. So going back to Nix to the Broncos, I guess I was thinking if the Broncos drafted like Bowers at 12 and then their next pick, they try to get Nix, but that would be in the second round. And by then these odds are saying that Nix is probably going to go in the first. So it doesn't really add up. Like one of those three are off, and it's just identifying like which one we think. And again, I think Broncos, there's enough there where they try to draft a QB, but that scenario where, May, McCarthy, Daniels, and Williams are all gone, I don't think at 12 they're going to draft a QB. So
and then you have the Raiders sitting there too. So
who knows what the hell
they are going to do.
They could just screw it up for everybody.
I will say though, Penix, like to be selected by like his team to be selected by, the shortest odds are actually the Raiders +250. If I end up being correct on that, I am going to clip every single time I have said that, because he feels very much like a Raiders move. But let's talk about the top 5. So I asked Twitter earlier today kind of like biggest questions surrounding the draft. One of them is obviously what team is most likely to trade out of the top 5. You mentioned Arizona. If it's not Arizona, which one is it out of Washington, New England, Chargers?
Yeah, so I would say the Chargers, I guess, because the Bears, I don't think are going to trade out. I don't even know I guess you can always trade out, but they're not going to. Washington, I feel like they're going to go with May. The Patriots, I don't know. That's hard for me to speculate on, just because now Bill Belichick is gone.
Yeah.
But I guess just by default, I would say the Chargers, right? Would that make the most sense?
I think so. And because I'm going to ask you kind of like, what are your hot takes for draft? One of my hot takes is about the Chargers. If I am in the New England front office, which I'm obviously not, I'm just like a random presence online. Like if I'm New England, I'm trading out. I don't think any quarterback in this draft, like almost including Caleb Williams, changes the outlook of your franchise next year. Like there's a lot of gaps to fill. So if you are in a spot where Minnesota wants to move up, you can get those 2 picks and then some, because I think Kwesi can be sweet talked a little bit from what we've seen happen his 2 years. And New England, I think, should be considering that. Are they going to? Probably not, because I think Kraft is the type of guy where right now, very Jerry Jones like, where the clock is ticking. Like we got to start winning some shit again, or I don't know what's going to happen. So Chargers seem like the next option. I think Chargers are interesting because they can still get a wide receiver and an O-lineman if they wanted to. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. If the Patriots don't think a QB is in their future this draft, do they try to go into free agency next year or look at the draft in 2025? Do you kind of see them doing something like that if they're not sold on a QB this year?
I think that so ultimately, I think they're drafting a quarterback.
This year.
I think that though we're gonna see, like we've seen how like Brady going to the Bucks, you've seen Stafford go to the Rams. Now Kirk Cousins, we'll see what he does now. Like I kind of think that the Patriots could put themselves in a position to follow more of that pathway, although it's very against what the Patriots dynasty knows, right? So it would be very unlike them.
Well, I mean, the dynasty, they drafted Brady in the 7th,
yeah.
So
and who knows? They're probably seeing that like we're drafting JJ, no problem. Number 3,
I know, or Spencer Rattler.
Yeah,
the Pats fans, I've seen it. They don't. I guess they don't want him, but
yeah, I don't know. Pats fans don't know what they want. They're very confused. They're very used to winning, so it's.
I know this is like new for them. It's like, oh, sorry guys.
It's hard to feel bad. I don't want to see a Patriots fan complain until they're under 500 for like the next 15 years. Then you guys can start complaining.
Exactly. I totally agree.
We're tired of it. So speaking of Minnesota, I think Minnesota too is one of those teams, and I'd love to know your opinion on this. So are they going to pay up to get to that 3 or 4 spot, 5 spot, whatever it is?
Man, it's hard to say. I wonder if they want to see how the first few picks play out, but it's really hard to say. I haven't followed it close enough.
Yeah.
Like I'm looking at this mock on CBS and it says JJ McCarthy at 11, but in my opinion, I don't think he gets to 11.
There's no shot because the Giants are sitting there at 6. That's why I think I keep seeing that too. And Minnesota did not go to get that extra first for no reason. Like that happened very purposely. And maybe that's the only move we see before the draft starts. But I feel pretty strongly that Minnesota, I don't know who it's going to end up being. You look at the odds right now. JJ has the shortest odds to go to Minnesota at plus 110. After that is the New York Giants at plus 265. And I think that's because if Minnesota wants JJ, I still feel like maybe there's a chance they try to get May. I don't know what they can make happen, how that happens. But I feel really strongly that Minnesota is getting into the top 5. Like I think that shouldn't be a hot take.
Do you see like a over-under position for like JJ McCarthy like to go?
Not yet. I haven't seen those go out yet. I would love for those lines to be out.
They'll probably come soon. But I mean, if I were to set a line, I would probably say like 5.5 at this point.
Yeah.
He moved up.
To see what that line comes out at.
Let's guess. I'm gonna guess 5.5. Just because of because the Cardinals, that would make sense. Maybe 6.5.
6.5. I think 6.5.
Yeah, we'll see. It's got to be around there. But like a month ago, we would have probably set that line at like 10.5.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah. Funny. I mean, a year ago, you would have not put him in the first round. Is the thing.
Yeah.
So it's hard, and I think Minnesota's in a interesting position because you've had Kirk Cousins move on. If he doesn't get injured, what does that look like? You also have the best wide receiver in the league. I will state that strongly. You could debate with your mom. Best wide receiver in the league right now, who's approaching needing a new contract. There's been talks of it. If you think for one fucking second JJ is going to sign an extension with Sam Darnold, you're crazy. Like JJ is not going to do that, period. And I think like it's great what we've seen from like Geno, and then you have like the Brock Purdy stories and all of that. And I think that's amazing. Like that's great for those guys. That doesn't mean that's going to happen with Sam Darnold, period. So I think you're in a spot where if you want to impress JJ to get him to sign some kind of extension before this year is up, like it's not Sam Darnold.
No, and if we've learned anything the last 2 days, it's that these wide receivers can basically leave at any time, any point. Literally any player can. Like it doesn't matter what the contract is. Like even Russ, like people were telling me there's like the Broncos can't get rid of him. There's no way. And it's like, no, there always is a way. A little different of a situation, but there's always a way.
So. There's always a way, 100% a way. Just like there's a way for the Giants to not draft a quarterback as much as everyone thinks that's going to happen. Players to be drafted at 6 before we get into some of these like best bets that we have. Neighbors plus 160 to be drafted at 6. Neighbors he's not my favorite out of the receivers because I think all 3 of these guys are fantastic. You can find a reason to want them on your team. Odunze probably fits in this offense a little bit better. Plus 450 to go at 6. There's a chance that Neighbors isn't there.
Yeah, Neighbors has definitely been steaming up. His numbers are really good. Super athletic. Yeah, it really comes down to like how some of these teams see the fit, because I don't think there's much difference between Rome, Neighbors, and Rome and Neighbors, because I do think Harrison, there is a little bit of a gap, Harrison Jr., but the other 2, I mean, it's either one I think you're happy with if you get them and need a wide receiver.
And it'll be interesting to see, like, is there a team that thinks, like, can we get an Odunze and a Penix? Like, is that in the cards for one of these teams to do both of them? I don't know. Do you think that the Chargers are dead set on taking a wide receiver?
Yes, but I don't necessarily know if it's that first pick. It depends. And I think they have a little bit of draft capital, like they could trade. This is just one mock, but I'm looking at it and it's I don't know how to pronounce his last name. It's Fuaga. I actually remember watching him against Colorado. Dude's good. He's really
Very
fast
good
for being 330.
Yeah.
This mock has him, and then also my source that I mentioned earlier, he likes him a lot too.
One of my hot takes is I feel somewhat strongly that 2 linemen are going to go in the top 10, and I don't think that should be a hot take.
Yeah, him and the who's it, Joe Alt?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that dude unit.
Yeah. God, we'll get into that. So what's like one bet you're really looking at for the draft, best bet wise?
Yeah, so I think at this point, since there aren't position drafts up yet, like over-unders for a specific player, I think I'm going to have to go with just Denver to draft that quarterback at minus 125 on FanDuel. There's a lot of different scenarios where they do that. I kind of outlined if it doesn't happen, it's probably going to be Bowers. I almost feel like there's a way you could hedge potentially, but you don't want to get too greedy and maybe the Broncos just trade out of it completely. But I think at minus 125, based on the info I'm getting, just how like Sean Payton's talking to these other quarterbacks, right? Like it seems he's spending a lot of time, even though it's Spencer Rattler and he would be outside of the first round, but just the way I think he's evaluating these guys, I think he really wants to draft a quarterback as soon as he can. So I think he will end up going with McCarthy. I guess that's kind of my hot take too.
Okay. I kind of like it. I think honestly, going off of that, I like the Jets' first player to be drafted to be an O-lineman at plus 135. I think that number is actually not as short as it should be. And I know I talked about this last Friday, but first of all, tight end has never been part of Aaron Rodgers' brand. Like, that's not a position that we know of Aaron Rodgers when you think about him. He's coming off an Achilles injury. He's fucking old. And yes, they improved the O-line during free agency, but it continues to be something that absolutely plagues the New York Jets among the other
every
things
year
that are going on.
It's depth too, right? They address it, but then one injury, like it's depth too. So
it's a New Jersey thing apparently, but I think, maybe it's Fuaga. I don't know if he falls further than that, but I think for the Jets to take whatever the second lineman is, which again, that's going to be one of the premier guys at that position. I don't think the Jets pass on that. It would be ridiculous, in my opinion, for them to do that. So at plus 135, still a really good number.
I like that because if it comes down to an O lineman or even like Rome at that position,
yeah,
I think they actually go with a lineman because they already have Garrett Wilson. They have some playmakers already, so I think they try to strengthen that offensive line. Like your post says, nothing else matters if there's
nothing
no
else matters unless you're the
line.
Bengals and you
Yeah,
shut me up all the time.
I don't know how
it.
That's an outlet. That's
Which
a
they are
outlet.
very much like they are. I mean, their first position to be drafted to be an O lineman is like -3 something at this point, which it should be. Is there anything else that you're looking at as far as best bet goes?
I think that's all I have right now.
Okay.
I think, just I would tell people listening, as soon as those markets start to come out, have an idea like based on what you're saying, what I'm saying, what the market's saying, like have an idea of like, oh, I think he's going to be drafted here.
Yeah.
So when those numbers come out, I get caught into this trap all the time, like where it's like I want to bet an over, and then you see the number and you're like, I'm betting the over. But if you have that the actual price in mind, it will help decide if you're going to bet it or not. So that's got to be like at least next week.
It's got to be soon.
like,
We're closing in on it, and I think like I've said it a million times on the show, and if you followed me for a while, even like during the NFL, like when it comes to like setting the line for each game, before those numbers come out, like, or before I look at them, I'm writing them down on a piece of paper. Like I could go through this drawer and probably find some from this past year. I write them down on a piece of paper, and I do the same thing for the draft. So where I think guys are going, what the number, I think where it's going to be set. And then I kind of compare the two. And I think for the draft, you can find more value that way. The only other like best bet before I get into like a couple of these hot take bets and then let you go, Troy Benson to be the first running back drafted. I gave it out last Friday at plus 240. It's now at plus 160. I would still take it. Okay. I think you're starting to see a little bit of value though on Brooks, who is now at plus 225. If that continues to go up, I'd probably put a little sprinkle. If that gets to like plus 250, plus 270, then you might find me throwing a little bit of money on him as well. But I think at plus 160, there's still value there.
I was just about to look at, okay, so total running back selected in the first round.
0.
Yeah. But if you wanted to get crazy, like, because every draft, there's always like something where we're like, oh, wow, this happened. I wasn't expecting this to happen. I don't know if it's that, but if you want to get crazy. I have
it for you. It's in my hot takes. Don't worry.
Okay. But I just want to say it is plus 800 for a running back to be.
Oh, it's round. Okay. Hold on though. It was plus like, I think it was 10 to 1 last time.
Really? But look, it's just like it would be like a team who wants to reach for one of those guys, and then they don't have another pick until like maybe later in the second round. But I just there is a lot of talent in this draft, so I don't know if someone reaches like that, and it's a running back position.
There's only one man in the world that would do it. And it's Jerry Jones.
Yeah, no one's gonna stop him. No
one's gonna stop him. Last thing before hot takes, actually. Kansas City right now, we won't get like super into it, but Rashee Rice is having his own little legal issues going on. They are minus 130 for wide receiver to be the first position drafted. Is there any value still there? Because I think we might have a little bit of value.
I mean, we've seen they like to draft offensive players in the first round, going back to Clyde Edwards-Helaire and then Rice, and was it Sky Moore?
Yes, or was that? Was.
Yeah. So, but I will say though, well, I guess Bieniemy was out when they drafted
Fair
Rice, right? So maybe it is an Andy Reid thing. So I actually think there could be a little bit of value. What about like Brian Thomas Jr.?
I know. I think so too. And then, but I guess you have to think about the Bills. There's a couple teams on the back end that could go wide receiver.
Mitchell could get drafted.
If Bengals were to somehow pull off a T. Higgins trade day one, do they end up going wide receiver? I don't know. But I think with Kansas City, minus 130, I think as this legal stuff continues to come out, you might
because who knows?
Value there.
We don't know if he can play.
I see Cody saying that Chiefs need their franchise left tackle badly. They absolutely do. Chiefs are also in a good spot for, let's say some of these quarterbacks do fall, one of these teams that needs one to jump back in to draft before.
Didn't they bring in Carson Wentz?
They did.
That was so random to me.
On April Fool's Day, which was rude for Carson.
I got it had to have been something where like Mahomes and him talked about it beforehand. There's no way they would bring him in. That's such a preference thing for like a backup, but whatever. I mean, you don't want him to play much, obviously. That's the goal, but
so yeah, as much as keep him away as much as you can.
Yeah.
Hot take wise, you have a hot take for this draft?
I'm trying to think of a hot take. I was trying to like something with that second pick.
Okay.
Like I feel like because the Commanders are one of those teams where it's almost like if there was a team to like do something funky and it's the Commanders, are we really going to be shocked? I don't know if my hot take is like they trade, but and it's kind of a cop out of my hot takes. Like the Commanders do something silly. It's not specific enough, but I mean, if we had to put a percent on the chances that the Commanders trade out of the second pick, like what would you set that at?
I think taking a quarterback with the second pick as the Washington Commanders is a disservice to that quarterback.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, I agree.
No, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why though, because that O-line's not ready, and they're probably going to take May, and I think that's a disaster because I think May,
he deserves better.
He needs that also to succeed, so it makes me uncomfortable. The percentage I think that happens, I mean,
they're not going to do it, huh?
With a new front office in there, I just don't think that.
Yeah, I wanted to like say that as my hot take, but
which coach was it that I think it was the LSU coach that said Daniels will be throwing for Washington next year?
That's true. I wanted my other like semi hot take is that a team trades up for Harrison Jr., but the more I think about it, like there's a limited amount of teams that would do that.
Well, everyone's really cute on Twitter because they think that because Dable and Shane were former Bills that we're just gonna like give up the world for whatever the Bills want.
Yeah,
I promise you that's not happening.
Yeah,
like that's just like not how it works.
It's like too fantasy football thinking, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, this makes sense. Yeah. But hey, at the same time though,
the amount of mock drafts now, it's like, oh yeah, the Bills are going to get Neighbors because they're going to trade with the Giants. The fucking Giants are going to take Neighbors.
It's like great content where you're like, haha, this is funny, but then you're like, all right.
I know you're coping because of Stephon Diggs, but whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. Few of my hot takes. I have two. We'll add a little betting spin to them. So one of them is for Atlanta to take a cornerback first, plus 175.
Ooh, okay.
Kenyon Mitchell, quarterback from Toledo. I really like him to Atlanta, and maybe I'm pushing that right now. For them to draft an edge is the favorite, minus 190. Mitchell to be a top 10 pick though, plus 380. I really like it. I could see Atlanta being the team that does it.
He's been flying up. Like people like him. It's funny, like looking back, because I watch a lot of college football, but I don't go back typically and like watch film like a lot of like the more NFL people do, and then they're like, I'm gonna learn. But I do remember hearing his name a lot on Maction, right?
Yeah.
And they were like, anytime he like had a pass breakup, the announcers were like, "Oh yeah, that's why he's going." Yeah, of course. But I remember hearing his name, and like he does check out. Like he has good size, with his speed. So,
and it's not that Atlanta can't use a cornerback is the thing. So I know that we're down on the cornerbacks in this draft. I like that there because at the plus 175, you can take Atlanta to take a cornerback first, which they could trade back and still do the same thing and still take Mitchell if they wanted to. So I think where they're at 8, which they draft every single year, is a good spot for them. Edge is the favorite, but he's so speedy at a really good combine. I think that moved him up a bunch of boards, and I like him. I like Atlanta. I'll say my hot take is Atlanta to take a cornerback first.
Okay.
Although I like Mitchell to be the pick. My other one is I think the Chargers are taking Joe Alt. I really do.
Ooh, okay.
Joe Alt to be a top 5 pick plus 470.
That's a good. I think that's a good bet.
I think it's crazy. I think everyone is so high on the wide receivers and the quarterbacks that they're not realizing that you are getting a cornerstone tackle with the safest floor in this draft of any player. I feel very strong. He is the safest floor. Maybe Caleb too. I think Caleb falls into that as well. But outside of those two, so safe. I don't know why the Chargers taking an O lineman is so shocking to everyone. I think it could happen. I think, you look at this guy, very safe, elite run blocking. What does their new coach love to do? Run the fucking ball. He has consistent hands. He has everything that the Chargers could want. You keep Herbert healthy. Plus 470 is
that's ridiculous. A good bet. I'm literally going to lock that in. And
I
also,
love that bet.
A lot of people don't think of it this way, but as much as we talk about like, oh, what offense did they run in college versus the pro, and we think about that for like quarterbacks, it is the same and similar for offensive linemen too, because there's different pass pros, there's different run blocking schemes, and Notre Dame ran a pretty balanced offense that is more aligned with an NFL offense. So I could see the Patriots coming in and trying to get him, or the Chargers. So I think that moves to like closer to plus 200. That's a really good bet, actually.
It's ridiculous. Top 5 is crazy. Any last comments about the draft before I let you get out of here?
No, this is just funny, but I think Kool-Aid McKinstry has the coolest name since HaHa Clinton Dix. So I mean, whoever gets him,
so like cool names.
Yeah, if your team drafts him, you got to get a jersey. Like that's hilarious.
So get a jersey.
Yeah, maybe just have Kool-Aid on the back too, right?
Yeah. I mean, how cool! I can't even imagine. He actually has better odds to go in the first round than Mitchell does, which I don't know if I agree with that, but I do agree he has a cooler name. The tackle run, Cody, is going to be very fascinating, but I think the wide receiver run is also, which is why I think Chargers just say, we'll get our guy. You haven't really seen what Quentin Johnson can do yet too.
Yeah, I think man, that's a whole other thing. I don't think his ceiling is, like, for fantasy purposes, I think he's going to perform, but he's not a number 1 wide receiver. Yeah. So but last thing, do you think the Broncos are like the team that could potentially start the domino effect in this draft?
Yeah, I think it could be. Okay, so it starts with the Vikings. That's where it goes. If the Vikings end up moving up, then it gets a little weird, because do the Raiders right now think that Penix is going to follow them, that whoever is going to follow them? Do they try to jump you? There's a lot of pressure building up between a lot of places, like Chargers and Giants. Are we talking wide receiver? Then we've got Vikings, Broncos, Raiders, quarterback wise. But then you also have the Giants, who could very easily say, no, we're going to take JJ McCarthy. So if you fucking want him, you have to come up and get him. And that's
there's a lot of cat and mouse game, and there's like 4 or 5 teams that you don't want to just be sitting with the pick and you're like, well, shit, now what? And I think like one of those 4 or 5 teams that we've been mentioning, it's probably going to happen. At least like the Broncos have it seems like a decent contingency plan. Not to say it's going to help them a lot for the season, but like some of these teams, it's like, now what if we don't get a quarterback? Because as soon as one team trades up, it's just a numbers game. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, if this guy's left, it's like, are you drafting him, or what do you do now? Do you get best talent on the board? So that's going to be interesting to see what team kind of trades up and starts that domino effect.
I'm going to stand by. I think Bo Nix is going to be a Bronco, is what I think is going to happen. I think this is the most pressure in a draft. Like the 2021 draft with Devontae Smith, like all those guys in that middle part of the draft. That's the last time I remember there being this much pressure. I will say, though, I think we get one quarterback from the back end of the draft that ends up being a stud. I don't know who it is yet, but I think that happens.
I think, like, the more I think about it, and of course it comes down to like what team, but like Rattler, I know he left Oklahoma and people were down on him, but like he went, from a 5-star all the way down to like, are you even going to be drafted? And he's been trending. So could be him. I mean, Baker Mayfield, like we've talked about him, he kind of went up and down throughout his career, and like you never know. You never know with these guys.
You never know. You never know. Armand,
Penix,
I
big
agree
Penix
with
energy.
you. I'm all over it. I'll let you get out of here if you're not following him at Ben_Cary_. Follow Capwise as well. And
Thanks, guys.
I'll have to get you on once we get those over/under lines.
I know. Maybe like the week
those
before.
are the best. That's where you find the value.
I know. Those are really fun because they move and then like information comes out and stuff goes crazy. So
100%.
I appreciate you.
All right. Have a good weekend.
See you later.
See ya. Producer Ryan's going to jump on here.
Whoa, I'm back.
You haven't been on in a while.
I know. What's been going on?
Do you hate us?
No, I love you. You just keep writing me out of the script.
I did not do that. What is Arizona going to do? Oh my gosh. I have an Arizona fan here right now.
I mean, people keep saying they're going to trade down, which I don't love.
Really? You think?
But I would love them just to take Marvin Harrison Jr. and have the next Larry Fitzgerald on their hands and be fine. And give Kyler someone to throw to.
You know what's two things. One, next week, let's do a mock draft based off just what uniform guys would look good in. I saw Kate Adams today brought in like a color specialist with Spencer Rattler to see what he looked best in. And that's like who he would be drafted by. But second, it's funny because I think every team fan on Twitter sees something different. Because I've seen that no matter what, Arizona is taking a wide receiver.
I mean, that's what I've heard, but I've also heard they're stupid if they don't trade down because they need so many positions.
I will say, I think if they trade down, though, Arizona's back in the playoff conversation. You want to hear a bold take? I really think if Arizona does trade down, say they trade with the Vikings. Yeah. Don't they already have another pick in the first
round?
Have
the
Will Anderson
pick. They have Houston's pick that is like the 21st pick or whatever.
So hear me out. They trade back with the Vikings. They have 11, 23, and whatever that Houston pick is. That's a lot.
It would be good, but did you see that they're over under what it is for next year? It's 6.5. Do you like it?
I think we bet it now.
Right? That's actually been a favorite.
I think we bet it now because if we wait and they get, let's say they trade back. Ready? We'll do a scenario. They trade back. They take, what do they take at 11? Whatever. They could still fill all their needs, still get a wide receiver, and it's still Kyler. I think a lot of it comes from Kyler disrespect. Like, he doesn't need a stud the way a lot of these guys do.
It would be great if he could have someone big to throw to, though, just so he could see them. I mean, look how much more successful he was with DeAndre Hopkins than he was with Hollywood Brown, you know?
Yeah. 11, 23, and 27. And what they could do, hypothetically, is say one of these pathetic teams that needs a quarterback, they could try to come up and get 27. And now we're really talking.
Yeah.
Now you guys are rich.
I'm all for mixing it up. I'm all for like draft day madness. So we'll just have to see. But I don't know. Right now, I do like I have my heart set on Marvin, but we'll have to see.
All right, we'll see how it goes.
I do like Neighbors too, so we'll see.
One of the two. You can't really complain.
Yeah. All right. Question 1 from Twitter. What is your cheat meal? That's from Darius Smith. Do you have a cheat meal?
I have cheat meals. Like, if I'm going to cheat, it's like a full day thing. I don't know if you saw, I posted on Twitter my steps for this past week. And on Sunday, I walk 1,000 steps. Like, when I say I don't move on Sunday, I don't move. It involves multiple delivered meals. Chinese food is good cheat meal because you got to go all in. Mac and cheese, pizza, one of the big 3.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say Italian food, like cutlets or something.
See, that's like not a cheat meal because I'm
that's
Italian.
Just like your base.
Doesn't count. That doesn't count.
All right. Sounds good. Question 2. When will Live Golf die? That's from Jeremy Casperson.
Whatever Jay Monahan just gives in.
So when?
That's about
it.
Yeah, it's what was that fake merger they were talking about? I'll give them 2 years, and it won't be dying. It's just going to be a combination of the two.
All right. Final question. How many states will be involved in your killing spree if the Giants take Penix at 6? That's from Chief Josh at XX Large Popcorn.
He's great on Twitter. I don't want to get banned from YouTube. What I will say is, if the New York Giants draft a 24-year-old quarterback with 2 ACL injuries to the same knee, a pair of shoulder injuries at 6, I'm done. Like, I'm being so fucking for real right now. I will not be a Giants fan. I probably still will be, but it's going to take a lot. That would be an absurd, like, talent aside, because I think Penix has the best arm talent of this class. But you just can't do that, especially when it's fans are rooting for him and want to draft him at 6. And even these NFL Network big heads are drafting him at 6. You guys want to replace Daniel Jones because of the fucking injury. So what are we doing here? So it will be quite a few states. I will not KILL, but I will drink a lot of bleach bevies, a lot of high noons. It will not be pretty. And I'm going to the draft. If that happens in public, good Lord.
You're going to the draft this year. That's awesome.
I know, it's in Michigan. What a weird, crazy year for it to be in Michigan.
It's gonna be fun.
I know.
We'll have to publicize where you'll be at so fans can come meet you.
And I'm making my own jackets for the first 2 days. I can't wait to show everyone. I'm very excited. A leather jacket and a jean jacket. I've been ordering patches. I'm doing a lot of like stencil stuff. Yeah, it's a whole thing.
Sounds awesome. Yeah. All right. Let's get out of here.
Okay.
Steph, what's in store for next week?
What's in store? It's the Masters. Best week of the year almost. We have a contest going on Splash Sports. You can find it in the description. $10 can have up to 6 entries. You pick 6 golfers. Your worst golfer gets dropped. And I can't wait. I think we'll do, haven't decided yet, but I want to do maybe a live stream for Friday or Sunday for the Masters, but we'll figure that out offline.
Yeah, that would be fun. We will promote that. So keep your eyes open, and we'll be back next week on Tuesday with the golf show.
Of course. See you guys.
Watch them make it, break it down.